the dream again last night. It always starts the same way. Caleb is laughing, his small hand reaching up toward me as we walk along a cracked sidewalk. The air smells faintly of rain and something metallic. I can't see his face. Not clearly. His features shift, flicker, like an old TV struggling to find a signal. I hear a voice. It's faint at first, distant, but it grows louder with every step. It's calling me. No, not me. Him. Caleb. The voice is jagged, like glass scraping on stone. Caleb stops walking. His hand slips from mine. Caleb. Wait! I call out, but he doesn't turn around. He steps off the sidewalk, onto the grass, toward a figure waiting by the fence. I can't see its face, but I can see its hand, long, pale fingers that stretch too far as it reaches for my son. I try to scream, but no sound comes out, and then I wake up. My chest was tight when I sat up this morning, my breath coming in shallow gasps. The dream lingered at the edges of my mind, like a smudge I couldn't wipe away. By the time I made it to the kitchen, the memory of it had started to blur, but the feeling remained. The coffee pot hissed and sputtered, steam curling upward like ghostly fingers. I leaned against the counter, staring at the cracks in the ceiling. They reminded me of spider webs, creeping slowly but steadily outward, threatening to swallow the room. I'd been meaning to fix them for months, but things like that cost money. Money I didn't have. Mommy. Caleb's voice drifted in from the living room, high-pitched and sweet, followed by a faint giggle. I straightened up, setting my mug down. What are you laughing at? Baby? He didn't answer, just giggled again. It was the kind of sound that usually made me smile, but today it crawled under my skin. My hands were already shaking from the night before. I hadn't slept much. Lately, I hadn't been sleeping at all. When I walked into the living room, Caleb was crouched on the carpet, his trucks arranged in a neat line. His small hands pushed one forward with a soft vroom sound, but his eyes weren't on the toy. They were fixed on the far corner of the room. Who's over there? I asked, half joking. He looked up at me, his curls bouncing with the motion. Nobody. I forced a smile. Come on, kiddo. Breakfast. The morning routine was always the same. Coffee for me, toast for Caleb. He liked it cut into triangles, no crusts. The crumbs scattered across the table like tiny pebbles, and I found myself brushing them into my hand obsessively. Are you going to see Nana soon? Caleb asked suddenly, his mouth half full. The question caught me off guard. Nana? Why? He shrugged, poking at the corner of his toast. I don't know. She misses you. I stifled a sigh. My mother had called 3 days ago, her voice sharp and probing. You need help, sweetie. You can't do it all on your own. I could still hear the way she'd emphasized help, like I was incapable of taking care of my own kid. Caleb's fork clattered against his plate, jolting me back to the present. He was staring out the window now, his little face unreadable. What are you looking at? I asked. He didn't answer right away. When he finally turned back to me, his expression was calm, almost serene. Nothing. By noon, the house was quiet. Too quiet. Caleb was in his room, humming again. It was faint, just loud enough to seep through the walls like a distant echo. I sat on the couch, staring at the pile of laundry I'd been avoiding all morning. The TV was on, some reality show I wasn't paying attention to. A couple argued over the price of a house while the camera panned dramatically between them. Their voices blurred together, rising and falling like waves. You're tired, a voice in my head whispered. You're so tired. Mommy! Caleb's voice jolted me upright. What? I called back, my heart pounding. I need you! I pushed myself off the couch, my legs heavy as lead. When I reached his room, the door was slightly ajar, the faint hum of his voice leaking out. Caleb? He was on the floor, surrounded by papers. Crayons were scattered around him like candy, bright colors smeared across the carpet. What's all this? I asked, stepping closer. Drawings. The pictures were strange. One showed our house, but the windows were blacked out, and the sky above it was red, slashed with jagged lines. Another had stick figures, me and Caleb, but my figure had an X where the head should be. "What's this one about?" I asked, holding up the stick figure drawing. He glanced at it, then shrugged. The man said to draw it. My stomach turned. "What man?" "The man by the fence," he said simply, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "Caleb, we talked about this. There is no man by the fence." He looked up at me, his big brown eyes wide and serious. "There is." That night, I couldn't stop staring at the ceiling. The cracks seemed bigger now, creeping outward like veins. The baby monitor sat on my nightstand, its little red light glowing like an eye. I could hear Caleb shifting in his bed through the receiver. Every now and then, he hummed softly to himself, the same off-key tune from earlier. It should have been comforting, but instead, it felt like needles pricking the back of my neck. The next day, the neighbor came by. Mrs. Hughes lived 2 doors down. She was always poking her nose where it didn't belong, but I couldn't bring myself to be rude. "Everything all right over here?" she asked, her sharp eyes flicking toward the house. "Fine," I lied. "I saw Caleb the other night," she said, lowering her voice. "He was out by the fence, just standing there." My chest tightened. "That's not possible." "Well, I know what I saw," Mrs. Hughes said firmly. "You need to keep a better eye on him." I didn't reply, just nodded until she left. The day after Mrs. Hughes' visit, I couldn't shake the unease creeping under my skin. Her words rattled around in my head like loose screws. He was out by the fence, just standing there. Caleb didn't even mention it. He sat at the kitchen table, munching on his toast like nothing had happened, humming softly between bites. That humming, it had become constant now, like a second heartbeat in the house. "What are you humming, sweetie?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He shrugged, swinging his legs back and forth. "It's a song the man taught me." I froze, the coffee mug halfway to my lips. "Caleb," I said slowly, "there is no man." He tilted his head, his expression unreadable. "There is." I didn't have the energy to argue, not when my chest was tightening the way it always did when the cracks in my composure started to show. By mid-afternoon, Caleb was in the backyard, pushing his trucks through the dirt. I stayed on the porch, folding a basket of laundry that had been sitting there for 3 days. It was warm outside, the kind of warmth that clung to your skin and made you sweat without realizing it. Caleb had been quiet for a while, too quiet. I looked up from the shirts I was folding, my eyes scanning the yard. "Caleb?" He didn't answer. I stepped down from the porch, the grass crunching under my bare feet. He was by the fence again, his little hand resting on the warped wood. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. He glanced over his shoulder, his curls sticking to his forehead. "Talking to him." I bit the inside of my cheek, hard enough to taste blood. "Go inside," I said. Now, Caleb hesitated, then trudged past me, his trucks forgotten in the dirt. That night, I woke up to the sound of something clattering in the kitchen. My heart leapt into my throat as I sat up, my fingers instinctively groping for the knife I'd started keeping under my pillow. The baby monitor was silent, the red light steady. Caleb was asleep, or at least, he wasn't in his room. I swung my legs over the side of the bed and crept down the hallway, my bare feet silent against the wood floors. The house felt wrong, the kind of wrong that made your skin crawl and your stomach churn. The kitchen light was off, but the glow from the street lamp outside filtered through the window, casting long shadows across the counters. Something moved in the corner of my eye, a small, darting motion that made my breath hitch. "Caleb?" No answer. I flipped the light switch, and the room was empty. The only thing out of place was a single butter knife lying on the floor, glinting in the fluorescent light. The drawing started the next day. I was cleaning Caleb's room, picking up crayons and action figures, when I found the first one. It was tucked under his bed, a crumpled sheet of paper covered in jagged lines and smeared colors. At first, I thought it was nothing, just a kid's messy doodle, but then I looked closer. It was a house, our house. The windows were blacked out, the roof tilted at an unnatural angle. Behind it, A figure loomed tall and thin, with stick-like arms that stretched out toward the house. "Caleb," I called, my voice trembling. He appeared in the doorway, his face blank. "Yeah? What is this?" I held up the drawing. He shrugged. "It's the man." My stomach twisted. "Why would you draw something like this?" He didn't answer. Instead, he turned and walked away, leaving me clutching the paper with shaking hands. By the third night, I wasn't sleeping at all. The baby monitor sat on my nightstand, its steady red light a beacon in the dark. I stared at it, my mind racing. I could hear Caleb breathing softly through the receiver, the rhythmic sound broken occasionally by the faint rustle of sheets. It was almost enough to lull me to sleep, almost. And then, just as my eyelids began to droop, I heard it, a whisper. "Mommy." I shot up, my heart hammering in my chest. "Mommy." The voice came again, soft and distorted. It was coming from the monitor. My hands trembled as I grabbed it, pressing the speaker closer to my ear. "Caleb," I whispered. The only response was a low, crackling hum. When I went to check on him, his door was locked. I'd locked it myself, of course, but in that moment, it felt like a barrier I couldn't cross. My fingers fumbled with the key, my breathing shallow and erratic. When I finally opened the door, the smell hit me first, faint but unmistakable, a metallic tang that made my stomach churn. The room was dark. Save for the faint glow of his nightlight, Caleb sat in the middle of the floor, his back to me. "Caleb?" He didn't turn around. My eyes darted to the floor, to the dark stains seeping into the carpet. My breath caught in my throat. "What did you do?" I whispered. Stepping closer, he looked over his shoulder, his face pale and smeared with something dark. "He said you wouldn't understand," he murmured. The rest was a blur. I don't remember much after that night, not in the way you're supposed to, with clean edges and crisp moments. It all blurred together, like someone had smeared a dirty rag over the days, wiping them into one long, suffocating smear of anxiety and noise. Caleb stopped speaking to me. He didn't even hum anymore. His silence hung in the house like a thick fog, choking out everything else. I stopped going to work. I stopped answering calls. Even Mrs. Hughes gave up on her wellness checks after I ignored her knocking for the third time. It was just me and Caleb now. And the man, of course. The night it all fell apart, I found another drawing. It was tucked under my pillow, the paper slightly damp from the sweat of my restless sleep. My hands shook as I unfolded it, the lines blurring in the dim light of the bedside lamp. This one was different. It was me, but not me, not really. The face was hollow, the eyes blank circles dripping red. My arms were stretched out, jagged lines cutting across them like deep gashes. Behind me, Caleb stood, smiling. My stomach lurched as I crumpled the paper in my fist. "Caleb!" I screamed, my voice echoing through the house. No response. I stormed down the hallway to his room, the knife already in my hand. It wasn't until I was standing outside his door that I realized I'd grabbed it without thinking. The door creaked open slowly, the dim light of his nightlight spilling out into the hallway. Caleb? He was sitting on the floor, just like before, his back to me. His small frame was hunched over something, his shoulders shaking. The smell hit me then, stronger this time, sharp and metallic, clawing at the back of my throat. "Baby?" I whispered, my voice trembling. He turned slowly, his face pale and streaked with blood. "It's okay," he said softly, his eyes wide and calm. "The man said you'd be better this way." Something snapped inside me. The knife felt heavier than I expected, its weight pulling my arm down as I lifted it. My vision blurred, the edges of the room dissolving into a tunnel of red and black. "Stop it," I hissed, my voice trembling. "Stop talking about him." Caleb didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't cry. "He's here," he whispered. I lunged. The first strike was clumsy, the blade grazing his arm before slipping from my grip. Caleb let out a sharp, high-pitched scream, the sound slicing through the air like broken glass. "Mommy!" he cried, scrambling backward. I grabbed the knife again, my hands slick with sweat and shaking uncontrollably. "You're lying," I shouted, my voice cracking. "He's not real!" The second strike was cleaner. The blade sank into soft flesh, a sickening crunch reverberating up my arm. Caleb's scream cut off abruptly, replaced by a wet, choking gasp. I don't know how many times I stabbed him. I just remember the sound. The blade tearing through muscle and bone, the wet slap of blood hitting the floor. And then, silence. When it was over, I collapsed onto the floor beside him. My hands were trembling, my chest heaving, my vision swimming with spots of red. "Caleb," I whispered, reaching out to touch him. His body was still, his small chest no longer rising and falling. The blood pooled around him in dark, viscous streams, soaking into the carpet and staining my knees. The knife slipped from my fingers, clattering to the floor with a hollow sound. What have I done? The words fell from my lips like ashes, crumbling into nothing as they hit the air. The sirens came next. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at Caleb's lifeless body. Time seemed to fold in on itself, dragging me under like a rip current. When the pounding at the door finally started, I didn't move. "Police!" a voice shouted, muffled and distant. The next thing I knew, they were in the house. I stood up slowly, my legs shaking beneath me. The knife was still on the floor, but the blood was everywhere. On my hands, my arms, my clothes. "Drop the weapon," one of the officers shouted, his gun trained on me. I didn't mean to. I murmured, my voice barely audible. He was lying. He was lying. "Put your hands up." I took a step forward, my hands outstretched. "Please," I whispered. He made me do it. The gunshot was deafening. I hit the floor hard, the air rushing from my lungs as pain exploded in my chest. The second shot came a moment later, sharp and final, silencing the pounding of my heart. As I lay there, my blood pooling beneath me, my thoughts drifted to Caleb, his smile, his laugh, the way he used to curl up next to me on the couch, his little hand clutching mine. "I'm sorry," I whispered, my voice cracking. Somewhere in the distance, I thought I heard him humming, the same tune as before, off-key and sweet. Then, there was nothing.